dancers, Jess here. I wanted to chat with you guys today about a really important topic and something that I talk about a lot here at The Whole Dancer, but something that sort of feels a little bit more obscure and not clearly defined until we've kind of fleshed out the how-to behind it. So I wanted to speak about how to create a positive relationship with food in your body. I say it a lot. Like I said, I will say, if you want to reach your body goals, first you have to have you have to be in a positive place with food and your body. And so dancers are kind of like, okay, great. How do I do that? Especially if you're in a negative place, right? You really need to make some shifts. There are some clear strategies that can help get you there, and some things that you can work on that will help you move in a positive direction. They're all part of the Whole Dancer 7-step best body process, and I'm going to share some of them with you guys now. As I'm chatting, if you have any questions, feel free to put in the comments whatever your questions might be. And if you're following, or if you check out this video later, leave me a little comment that says replay so I know that you're watching it later on and I can come over and see if you had any questions after the fact. So starting with food. Number one, we have to view food as fuel. So this can feel tricky for dancers because this doesn't mean that you're never indulging. This doesn't mean you're never eating things that are possibly less nutrient dense. But the mindset around food has to be that it is serving a purpose to take your dancing to the next level. It means putting a focus on creating meals that are not only delicious and pleasing, but also provide your body with key macro and micronutrients that are going to support all the movement that you expect from yourself. So that's number one, viewing food as fuel. Number two is we can't view any food as good or bad, right? It's really all just food. When we put those labels on things, that's where the guilt comes in. That's where, you eat something that you're calling bad and you say, oh, I was bad, or I shouldn't have eaten that, or I regret eating that. So when we remove the labels, it's a lot easier to just make food choices more intuitively based on what you actually want to eat in the moment and feel satisfied by them and not feel any sort of remorse afterwards or something that's going to lead you then to think you have to go and eat so perfectly, right? So perfectly healthy. And if you stray from whatever you're defining as healthy, again, you feel guilty. So we want to really remove those labels so you can really get to that positive place with the food. Then you want to also eat mindfully. So this is, slowing down, sitting for your meals, taking breaths between bites, giving your brain and body time to connect, because it does take our brains a little bit longer to catch up with the fullness sensation that happens in our bodies and tell us that, okay, you're done eating, you're satisfied, this is enough. So eating mindfully and slowing down is really essential to create that positive approach to food. And engage your senses with mindful eating. Make sure that you're actually taking in the food, visually, you're smelling it, you're tasting it, you're really giving it your full attention so that you'll derive true satisfaction from it instead of feeling like you get to the end of the meal and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even taste that, or I completely missed what was going on my plate because I was distracted by other things. So that's why we really want to focus in and give your food and your body in that moment the time, respect, and attention that it deserves. And finally, and this is connected to no foods are good or bad, but it sort of is taking it just a little bit deeper. No foods are off limits. It does the same thing as labeling foods as good or bad when we label those foods as bad, or we say certain foods are off limits. I should never eat them. I can't touch this. If I eat this, it makes me gain weight. You have to think back also if you have any of those associations, because oftentimes they're something we've created in our heads. There's usually not much truth to it. People will say things to me like, oh, when I eat peanut butter, I gain weight, or when I eat, some other food, it makes me gain weight. Odds are, unless you somehow or suddenly were going super overboard with a food like that, it probably wasn't the culprit. There was likely other things going on, but you've decided that it was that food, and so then that food becomes off limits to you, and then it creates a tricky place mentally where you might end up, again, saying, I'm never going to eat that, and then you get around it, especially if it's something you do, in fact, really enjoy. You get around it, and you go a little crazy. in my past, chocolate might have been one of those things for me, or honestly, peanut butter was a big thing for me. And so I tell my clients this story a lot, and I always tell the group coaching program participants. But in college, I lived with 5 other girls, and every single one of them had a jar of peanut butter in the kitchen. And I didn't buy it because I was like, I can't eat peanut butter. Eating peanut butter makes me fat. I had a very untrue association between dietary fat making me fat, which I have plenty of resources on that idea and how it is untrue. So go check those out if you need any validation that dietary fat does not, in fact, make you fat. But so I didn't buy it, and I would resist as much as I could, but then I had 5 different jars of peanut butter in the house, and I would ultimately end up in moments of what we would call weakness, right? Or like lacking discipline, perhaps, end up eating their peanut butter and going way overboard and having like half a jar and then feeling guilty because I've eaten my roommate's peanut butter, and it's like a whole thing. So if I had instead said, you know what, eating peanut butter is fine. I'm going to buy my own jar and I'm going to have some when I want it, and I'm not going to overthink it, and I'm going to say to myself it's allowed all the time. That's when you can have a really easygoing relationship with that food. Sometimes for dancers, it's important to allow all of those foods that you've previously labeled as off limits, allow them all into your home, allow them all into your day-to-day, and literally give yourself messages every single day that you can eat any of these foods whenever you want to. And then when you do that, they're not so scary anymore. It's just like, yeah, I can eat that whenever I want. That was my advice around Thanksgiving too. It's like, you can eat pumpkin pie in July. So we don't have to feel crazy around pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving or think, this is the only day I'm ever going to eat this. Let me have half a pie. So this is where that balance comes from. So those are some of the tips I have around creating that positive and balanced relationship around food. And so then moving into your body, number one, you have to undo all the negativity that you and others possibly have projected onto your body over the years. So you have to go back and uncover the things that have been said to you in childhood and in dance classes, from teachers, from artistic staff, from parents, from siblings, whatever it is that's in your mind that you come back to as evidence that you're not enough, you're not thin enough, you're not good enough, whatever it might be. And we have to undo those things by rewriting our body story. I'm not going to go super deep into that, but if you're interested in rewriting your body story, go over to the Whole Dancer blog, and I have a blog post on this. But what you really need to do is, go through those things, like write a list, and we have to undo them and say, you know what, this isn't true. It wasn't true in the moment, or even if it has even if there's like a semblance of truth to it, the deeper message that I'm telling myself that I'm not good enough because of this comment I received is not true. So for me, this was my thighs, right? When I was young, that was the first negative body comment I got returning from summer program, my first summer program away. I had gained some weight, and my teacher patted me on the thigh and said, that wasn't there before. And so immediately in my 13 or 14-year-old mind, I went to, wow, I'm fat. My thighs are too fat. And so this is what I always came back to when I wouldn't get jobs, when I would get, cut from an audition early, it was always my thighs. So, and it also told me I wasn't worthy. I wasn't enough to be a professional, to make it to the next level. I kept that story with me for my entire career. And so we have to really go back and say, what are these stories? What am I making them mean that's bigger than whatever it was? And we have to undo them. Like I said, there's a blog post on this on the Whole Dancer blog, so go and check that one out. You want to have a self-care plan. When we give our bodies the time and attention, this is similar to giving your food the time and attention, but when you give your body the time and attention that self-care requires, it sends a message to your body and brain that you're worthy, that you're worth the time, that your body is valuable and should be cared for. So, some simple things that you can do are dry brushing, taking baths. And you can Google dry brushing or email me if you want more information on that one. Take a bath. with some essential oils, do something calming, maybe meditate, even just like sitting down and like listening to music that like gets you pumped or calms you down. Journaling is a good one for self-care as well. But write down a couple of things. A big thing that I do when I work with dancers is like get them to create some plans and some things we can stick to that are not overwhelming, but are rather just like creating some structure around these practices, because they have to be consistent to be effective. So, write a little plan. I'm going to do these 2 things to give my body some care on these days. Make it clear, make it achievable. Don't go overboard and try to implement 10 new things tomorrow, but pick like one thing that you'll start doing tomorrow. And that's, like I said, it's going to give your brain and body that message that you're worth this time and care and attention. And that's super important to create that positive relationship with your body. Next is daily gratitude. And you'll hear, gratitude lists are big. We just had Thanksgiving, so there was a lot of talk about gratitude, I think especially this year because it was such a different situation than most. But writing a gratitude list for your body specifically as dancers every single day is really helpful. So what does your body do for you that you're grateful for? And sometimes dancers have a hard time with this one because they're like, oh, I don't know, it's not good enough, right? We go quickly and directly to that negative. So instead you want to say, well, if you have to start really simple, you can say my body gets me up out of bed every morning and allows me to walk around. And then we can go a step deeper and say, what does it do for me in dance? Whatever your favorite thing is in dance, I think is a good one to focus on. So like if you love Grand Allegro, hello, your body is doing quite a bit there to allow you to actually get through a Grand Allegro combination. So think about those things. What does your body do for you that you're grateful for? And write some things down every single day. I would play with this and see if you find it more helpful or effective in the morning or in the evening, maybe both. It wouldn't hurt. And then, you're just putting yourself in that positive mental headspace to start or end the day. And then I like a body appreciation meditation. So this is a good one if you're newer to the whole meditation concept or that feels like super out there to you. And this is something I tell dancers who are particularly struggling with like finding the gratitude for themselves. Lay on a yoga mat. You could just lay on the floor too. Put a hand on your heart and a hand on your stomach. Take some deep breaths and only think positive things about yourself and your body. Tell yourself that you're worthy. Tell yourself that you're enough. Tell yourself that you're beautiful inside and out. These things, these messages, and even if it feels silly at first or challenging for you because maybe you don't believe it at the start, the more consistently, and this is another one I would say maybe do every single day because it can take you 2 minutes, 5 minutes, a very short period of time. The more consistent you are with these sorts of things, the more they sort of like internalize and have a really super positive mental effect. So you're just kind of giving yourself those loving, positive vibes. Super simple. And then finally, number 4, when you're in the studio looking in the mirror, you've got to quiet the constant criticism. And the best way to quiet it is when it comes up and you're having a negative thought or a super critical thought about your body specifically or your technique, you're going to instead look in the mirror and pick out what you're doing well. Even if it's like something super tiny and you're feeling, again, maybe challenged to come up with something, pick out something that's going well and put your focus on that. Another thing that I've been speaking to some clients about recently is when you look around the studio, if you're going to pick out what others are doing well, and this is going to help too, because we can often be a little bit better, or it can come a little bit more naturally to look around the room and say, oh, she's doing that really well, or I'm inspired by the way she's approaching this step. So doing that and then allowing ourselves to project it onto ourselves as well is going to help to create that shift. And then another one, again, this is something I've spoken about recently with some clients. If you find that you look around and you criticize the bodies of other dancers, even if it's just on Instagram, if you say to yourself something like, oh, she's good and she looks good maybe, but she would probably look better if she were thinner, you're 100% going to most likely imposing that on yourself as well. So I want you to think about where that thought came from. Where did it originate? What are the messages you received when you were younger, or the messages you are constantly receiving on social media that are sort of enforcing that idea that thinner is better, thinner looks better, thinner is going to get the job? And we have to start to undo those things. And some of the best ways to undo them is, again, when it comes up, when you're looking at these other dancers and you're having those critical thoughts about their bodies, say, you know what? She's beautiful exactly as she is. Even if you have to start simply there by just saying, okay, I have to shut this down and tell myself and reinforce that she's completely beautiful exactly as she is, that's a good place to start with this one. Like I said, implementing all of this stuff takes time and ongoing attention. So I want you to pick out some things from today's video that you can start to do every single day. Pick a couple of small ones around food and a couple of small ones around your body, and like write them down, keep them somewhere where you'll see them regularly. And again, you're gonna go back and practice these every single day. And then maybe as you're like getting consistent with things, you'll add on one other thing. If you guys are interested in getting more information on reaching your personal best dancer's body by creating this positive relationship to food in your body, join me on Wednesday. I'm going to be having a free Best Body workshop at 8 p.m. I'll include the link here in the video description, and then also I'll put it in the comments so you can click that link and join me. Like I said, it's on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you can't be there live, sign up anyway, and I will send out a recording afterwards. If you guys have any questions about today's video, whether you put them in the comments or feel free to send me an email, jess@thewholedancer.com. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for tuning in, whether you're watching, like I said, live or in the replay, and I'll be back here live in a couple of days. Have a great rest of your Thursday.